It's the 27th of November 2020, and as the time of waiting for the Christmas time, for, the, for another celebration of the birth of Jesus Christ is approaching, about to start on the 29th, this Sunday. There are thoughts surfacing, especially in that special situation of horror unfolding each day. This is the time when I wonder, I wonder a lot, but I wonder from hopelessness and the overwhelming sense of some surrender in a way to death, that is withdrawing from life and not continuing to create, dealing with all those ethical problems of something being moral or immoral. For instance, should I take any kind of product anymore? All those thoughts come and go, so to say. But I'm moving between, wandering between those two poles. The first one being the surrender to death, and the second one being rising for life. And actually using the talents I have been given by God, and in my personal outlook on life, I have had, due to my previous lifetime's work. So they are truly mine, not only by the endowment from God, but also by my own way of life. And recently I have been able to read a bit more. It's not my normal reading, but it's at least something under the circumstances. It verges on a miracle. And obviously from any reading come ideas. So I have started reading the huge book on Romanticism and history by two Polish professors, I guess professors. The level of the book signals a high achievement. And I have also started reading the Old Testament. Apart from that, I have started reading the spiritual history of Christianity, a spiritual history of Christianity, that is the development of spirituality. I have started reading a biography of Benedict, the Pope, Benedict XVI. And I have many books around me generally. I have come up with the idea of creating the poetic drama inspired by Adam Mickiewicz's Diady, which would be contemporary, dealing with the current situation, but set in the historical times. So that would be really something, and mine would be royal. Overall, obviously I will also reach for something Shakespearean. So England should not rest at peace because the spirits live. And my current situation with the deaths happening around me certainly has the effect of this wandering between the pole of surrender to death and the pole of rising for life. My personal horrors are squashing, but I do not lose trust in God above the institutional organizations. I have been disappointed in the Roman Catholic Church, and I have been disappointed in God too, because obviously my normal thinking goes, well, from all the people on the planet Earth, me and my mom should have been rewarded and not punished for our noble life, goodness, kindness, care, love. So it is a totally incomprehensible situation. However, as I said, I was endowed with those special gifts, and the last part of my educational journey was the Pontifical University of John Paul II in Krakow. I cannot talk in Russian yet. I cannot speak Russian well enough to discuss philosophy, even without going into the jargon and theoretical sophistications required by, if I may call it, the science of philosophy. However, I'm advancing a bit into my own philosophy, which is New Romanticism. In other words, Honestian Romanticism, developed from my noble wing of Honestian, virginal, pure, spiritual, and monarchic optics. So, New Romanticism, I have created a map, and it has three main centers, apart from the title New Romanticism, Honestian Romanticism. This is the spirit, icons, and nation. And history, and history. So let's start from the spirit, because this is really the ontology. So the spirit, of course, is the primary existence. And when we think of the spirit, we obviously think of God the Creator. So we know that at the beginning there was the spirit. And from that God the Creator result certain directions. So the first direction is quite simple. These are sacred books, and in the Honestian Romanticism, all sacred books are studied carefully. All sacred religions are considered. And this is the Word of God and the presence of the Holy Spirit in their lives. But otherwise, from God, obviously, there's the creation, that is nature, and the Holy Order. The Holy Order has the laws, the primary laws. The physical laws on our planet belong here, of course. And there are the natural rights. So if we think of the human rights, at the very beginning, the emphasis was made on the natural rights as the rights coming from God and being inherent in the relations between human beings due to the man being a creation of God, endowed with the divine origin. And the natural rights, which is, if you want to call it my right wing, equivalent of the human rights, just viewed from a different perspective. Further develop into an emphasis on the spiritual rights. It is a signal of our times, because normally people have the spiritual rights, and when we start talking about the spiritual rights, it means that something has happened which has made the talking necessary. So there has been some major change in our culture, also in our legal situation, which has made the concept of the spiritual rights surface. The Holy Order implies morality. So a human being ought to be moral. And I'm interested in morality overall. So this is the development from the Spirit, God the Creator, the Holy Order, and morality. God is not viewed only as the past, but is viewed as present in life, in our life. And it's particularly important for the development of history, but also, of course, for our daily life. So if we go back from the God the Creator, present in life meaning still creating, if we go back to the Spirit, from the God the Creator, here I have marked a few directions too. So as I mentioned, there's the history as the overall phenomena, a chronological phenomenon. Together with it go periods in literature. I believe we are at the time when the literature should again become very spiritual. The spiritual should be strong. So in Poland it goes from the Middle Ages, and then there's the Renaissance, and then there's the rise of the spiritual in Baroque, and then there's the Enlightenment, and then there's again the rise of the of the spiritual in Romanticism, and then we have Młoda Polska, which is called neo-romanticism quite often, and this is also the spiritual on the rise. And then I'm not sure how they discuss the 20th century because I was already out of the school education or university education when they started, I believe, with the turn of the century. Well, I completed my studies in 2001, but at the time I was focused on Shakespeare. Nonetheless, I believe we right now are at the time when the spiritual should be on the rise. And it of course corresponds to my creation of this philosophical school of New Romanticism, the Honestian Romanticism. And as I said, I want to participate in the process of the creation of the Honestian romantic literature. Let me put it this way. So, the history as the phenomenon, periods in literature which correspond to it. Then we have the nation and the individual. So, this is the ontology that sees the nation as the development from the spirit. And the same, of course, concerns the individual, the basic ontological presence, the man or the woman, the individual. The individual I have problems with talking. You have no idea what's happening in my mouth cavity and generally in my body at the level of my face, head, but other parts of the body too, including the intimate parts, the private parts. So the individual, in agreement with all romantic thinking, is powerful and important. So, what are the characteristics of the individual? The individual has a mission. Each individual person has a mission. Some are aware of it, some not. But each of us has his or her own unique mission. The individual has his own or her own visions, or could have, or optimally should have. The individual, most of the individuals want to be free, so it's quite important to define the freedom. And the new romantic, or the Honestian romantic concept of freedom will be different from what's on the philosophical market now. But most probably when we reduce that all to the core idea of freedom, it will be still the same concept. So part of the process is looking for the right words. The individual seen as consistently as God's messenger, but also as cooperating with God. I was looking for a better word. I didn't like the word cooperating. Generally, I want to divorce the business terms, but I could not find any. So, working together with God or helping God, with God helping the individual, or not necessarily, well, of course, the romantic thinking does not have simple and nicely cut, nicely delineated blocks of life, so to say. This is a life, this is living, this is dynamic, and even if ideas can be simple, the actual life, the confrontation with life, implies elaborations. Nonetheless, the individual has his or her own life path. The life path is not exactly the same as the mission. The life path happens whether the individual focuses on it or not, because we live day after day, and our actual life is our life path. While the mission has to do with our individual destiny, destination, purpose, endowment. Certainly talents go together with the mission. Anyway, this life path that we travel results in a creation. So it does not require, it does not mean I need to sit in front of a huge sheet and put my ideas or pictures there to create. We create whether we like it or not. Each conversation is a creation of life and of qualities. Well, perhaps quality is not a good word to use in Romanticism, so I will be looking for my language too. An example of my looking for my language can be the next concept, which is idiosyncratics. I'm not sure if such a word exists. Certainly there's a word idiosyncrasy, so perhaps I could use the word idiosyncrasies. However, idiosyncratics here are like characteristics, only the word emphasizes the uniqueness and the very individuality of the very person. Then, from the spirit as I originate the ideas, I naturally start from Christianity because I was baptized to be the Roman Catholic. I was born in Holland, so it's what I know best. It's most familiar. Poland lives in Christianity. And it's been here for ages. So there's a concept that we can uphold and review about 3 epochs. And this is a new concept for me, coming from my recent reading. And actually it was not developed. There was only mentioned the third epoch as the epoch of the Holy Spirit. So I guess it implies the previous 2 epochs, the epoch of the Father and of the Son. And it's certainly worth looking at. However, it must be looked at with the awareness that this is the Christian point of view. So here we depart from this purity of the Spirit and even from the purity of the God, the Creator, as a one-line thinking, and bearing in mind that we can have this perception of the spiritual world, of the spiritual development of humankind and life on Earth. We arrive back from the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit to different time perspectives, which have to do with different spiritual spaces. For instance, you can look at Hinduism. Of course, we still have God the Creator, which I believe, and I am determined to stay in that, to remain faithful to that belief. This is still the God. However, this is a totally different spiritual space. And when you look at those different spiritual spaces, we can view cognitive affinities, spiritual affinities, historical affinities. Well, cognitive affinities is obviously about philosophies, ideas in philosophies, descriptions of life or the world, etc. Spiritual affinities have to do with the spiritual life. So, for instance, there are many qualities represented by Buddha that are in affinity with the qualities represented by Jesus. Historical affinities would have to do with the history of a nation. So we can think of Poland and Tibet, where Poland did not exist on the map as Poland, and nowadays Tibet, officially from the Chinese perspective and the perspective still accepted by other nations, Tibet does not exist on the map. So these are historical affinities. And if we think of the history as coming from the Spirit, the first Spirit, before we have God the Creator, the creation being already the history, then such affinities become important, because in 2 different spiritual spaces in two different time perspectives. The Tibetan calendar is totally different from the calendar that we have. Well, perhaps not totally, because it must refer to certain phenomena we can observe in the outside world, and our observations must meet regarding some points, like the sun or the moon or the seasons of the year, even if they are different in different geographical regions. Still, we have these are historical affinities. And then we look at mythical affinities. So, what becomes a myth? And already here I need to emphasize that the romantic idea of the myth is slightly different from some may connote with it. Sometimes when we want to depreciate something, a religion, for instance, we say, well, this is mythology, and this is derogative. The idea of myth in Romanticism is totally different. It actually has this elevating significance to it. So, if we think of the historical thinking and the mythical thinking is higher. We have those ancient myths, but we also have the new history, and an example of the myth, of the national myth, would be the French Revolution for France and Europe, and of course with the resounding echoes all over the world. So the myth has this sacred quality to it. Paradoxically enough, in the case of France and the French Revolution, if we think of sacrum and profanum. And then also in those different spiritual spaces we have individual life affinities. So we can look at biographies or at any person. The last direction from the spirit is life. And there are no directions from this concept, this idea here. Idea perhaps is better, because it includes all that I have not included, that has to do with life. And then we go to icons. Icons understood as notions that become pictures of something very important. Relations, and other meanings. They are like a suspended tail, I think I could say. That is, they do not represent only a definition. They represent an experience, a history, but also all sorts of openings, possibilities, potentials. Again, uh, striving a bit as far as words are concerned. I sense those that do not that do not remain in harmony with what I want to create. However, I'm not ready with the language yet. So, as it says, ideas as of the 27th of November 2020, this is an outline and signals rather than a proper presentation of a philosophy which has matured and is ready for exposition. And the icons I have chosen. Also, as an experiment so far, I believe, are family, home, mother, virgin, son, father, husband, wife, and daughter. Probably I should have put it all with the family, the home, the mother, the virgin, the son, the father, the husband, the wife, the daughter, as a generic form, but I'm not certain. So, again, this is something that will come out as I develop my thinking. These are but directions. And apart from that, there is that tree. And this is that tree, because this is what I have in mind is the generation tree. So I did not want to go into those grandmas, grandpas, granddaughters, grandsons, and great grand family. So this is the tree. And another concept is the crown. My Romanticism reaches back for the royalty. And it has to do with the different situation where this is the left wing that has become a tyranny. So we have traveled and we have arrived back at where we started. And my decision at this point is the monarchy, and the question is, well, what monarchy, rather than the monarchy or no monarchy. For me, basically, that last question today would be the monarchy or the mob. Too much mobbing to have any naive belief in mob anymore. In the mob anymore. So these are my icons. And now history. From here I have again a few directions. So obviously this is the history of humankind. So humankind, religion, nation, and aspirations. So let's start from the nation. Again, this is all spiritual. The spirituality realized that is consistent. But what do we have in what directions we have with regard to the nation? Language, tradition, and from tradition we have rituals, culture, which is slightly different from their tradition. Ethnicity, I have put it back here. Awareness and experience, literature, myths, and artists. I have decided to differentiate between literature and artists. And when I think of artists, I include musicians here. And theater also would be among artists, would be in the category of artists. However, the dramatic work in the realm of literature, the Polish romantic drama, the poetic drama, was for reading. Of course, it could be performed. I'm not sure if they had any hopes for the works being performed in the theaters of the Poland they lived in, due to the oppression and the curbed freedom of all patriotic and independent thought, I believe. I'm not sure about independence, the personal independence, but the patriotic was certainly out of place unless it was a different kind of patriotism which has been accepted as politically correct. Again, the language that does not go together with the philosophical school, but which I need to use until I develop my own, until I find my own. But nonetheless, the works are written, the dramatic works of the Polish Romanticism are written for reading. So I put them in the realm of literature, where theater generally with artists. And another very important direction from the nation that I have decided to specify are definitions. So each nation has its own definitions of many things valid in life. And then we have religion. And I believe that for the spiritual history of humankind, the key concept here would be transgressions. And of course, from transgressions we have crimes. So, in other words, the sin. I believe that, again, starting with Christianity, because this is the religion I was baptized into. And it's most familiar. So I believe that this is what the believers should focus on. And these are not only personal transgressions, these are transgressions on the national, but also on the human level. So, in other words, what the man has done to the man, or the woman to the woman, or generally what people have done to people. And I believe this is key for the development of religion. And it also should be viewed in the perspective of the sin against the Holy Spirit. I do not believe that the idea and the teaching of forgiveness is key, because the when man, when the human being forgives the sin against the Holy Spirit, they commit an unthinkable transgression of arrogance against the will of God. And I believe that this can be the reason for the continuation of the unthinkable crimes against humanity. But, of course, the philosophical area opened once we take this perspective is, what does it mean not to forgive? Does it mean to start a slaughter? And I believe that we should be at the level when we ask ourselves those questions and not when we go into action that has no turning back. But of course, it's obvious that in each religion, apart from what we do, it's quite important what happens in the relation between people and God. And this direction is revelations. And then another direction, prophets. Then we have humankind. And from the humankind, I have three directions. That is philosophies, ideals, and current tyrannies. So obviously the key idea of the Romantic thought is the freedom against the tyranny. So as I view the situation, the current tyrannies are finance, communism, and sexuality. Finally, from history, I have the direction that points at aspirations. So this is the review of the aspirations humankind has had over ages. And of course we can ask ourselves how it relates to the divine source or beginning in God. So this is more or less the idea of the new Romanticism, of the Honestian Romanticism. As the time of preparing for the coming of Jesus, for the birth of Jesus, as the seasonal holiday is approaching, I'm currently focused on the Old Testament But I have my books from other religions on my table too. I don't have too many sacred texts. I only have the Holy Quran. But I have some selections of the holy texts, and I have some histories which relate to the thought, narrated thought. Well, overall, my library is quite rich. Um, I also have a lot of poetry. I want to devote more attention to poetry. Um, the poetic language is very, very important, um, and poetry has a very high status. I have not pinpointed it exactly. I should have given the direction from literature, I guess, the poet. Well, perhaps I will add it if there is the place. Let me look. Sadly, there is not much place. Anyway, I have not mentioned it. Literature. So this is obviously the word written by letters, but still, this is the word. This literature comes from this first words. So this is really the spiritual power carrying humankind. In our relations with life. Agnieszka Beata Magdalena Roig, or Agnieszka Justitia, the first of Honestian. Friday, the 27th of November 2020. From Under the Siege. Among the horror. In life against the death.